Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. Tiki here.
And SandyClaws.
And welcome to the spine-tingling reboot of this Scary Adventures podcast. Maniacal laugh. All right, that's right, folks. We are back. We are doing the revival of the Scary Adventures podcast. Now, of course, back in the day, this is one of my favorite podcasts that we used to do, Sandy. This was like back even before Blue Dragon 5's time, if you can believe it. Maddie and Reith and I started it up mostly to go over ghosts of Disneyland and stuff like that. Mr. One Way being a prominent one that I've actually had a run-in with in the past. But alas, it's expanded out, and it's not something that we've done on a regular basis, and I want to change that. So I want to just formally announce, people, two of my favorite things to do on this channel: Disney debates and Scary Adventures. And two of the things that in my opinion, we don't do enough of. We're going to do it every other week. Every other Thursday is going to be either a Disney debates or a Scary Adventures with your good pal SandyClaws here. Look at him go! All right, so Sandy, you are kind of like the I'm going to be your liaison into the world of the glitch in the Matrix phenomenon, this podcast, which is something that I've been following for about a year. I want to give a lot of credit. I'll actually link it into the description. I'll link to this guy's YouTube channel, the YouTuber Hell Freezer. Now, I've listened to a lot of like scary narration YouTubers over the past couple years. This guy, I think, is easily the best. He's Scottish, so he's got like kind of that charming, like, you know, like young Sean Connery thing going on. I don't know, his voice is just really soothing, but what he really gets down and gritty with is the glitch in the Matrix stuff, Sandy, and the Mandella Effect, which is the thing that Sandy and I talked about on the last Scary Adventures podcast. Sandy, God, how long ago was that? That feels like ancient history at this point.
Yeah, that's a few months ago.
So the Mandela Effect, I feel like, is a byproduct of the glitch in the Matrix, and the glitch in the Matrix is essentially something that happens in your reality that you just cannot explain. I use basically the very basic analogy of like, if you're walking down the street, you see like some birds flying overhead, but you notice that the birds aren't flapping their wings. They just seem to be like gliding instead of actually flying. That's something that I've heard happen. And that's, you know, there's a lot of other crazy things. Go to the Glitch in the Matrix subreddit if you want to read up more, or go to Hell Freezer's channel. He has a whole big playlist. He has like, I think almost 50 Glitch in the Matrix videos where he narrates a bunch of these stories. But we're going to get into the nitty gritty of all that. And we're also going to talk about some Deja Vu here, which may or may not need its own topic in the future. I don't know. It's just I feel like Deja Vu kind of connects to the glitch in the Matrix because it's something that happens within the fabric of our reality that just kind of like throws you through a loop when it happens to you. So Sandy, let's talk at first about the Mandela Effect. All right.
Yeah.
It's been a bit oversaturated, no?
Yeah, it has. I think so.
Oh man!
I think people are just so enthralled with it. They're so fascinated with it that they find an excuse to use it.
To this day, the goddamn Andrew Zimmerman thing is still the thing that like throws me off the most, Sandy. It's Bizarre Foods with Andrew Zimmern. Zimmern. How the hell could I mispronounce Zimmern with Zimmerman? I don't know. That, of course, the Ricky Ricardo like never saying Lucy, you've got some splaining to do, and I Love Lucy. That still really fucks me up. Like Blue Dragon 5 is as big of an I Love Lucy fan as me, and he's like, oh, well, Tiki, he says splain. I'm like, yeah, but that's not the exact words, Lucy, you've got some splaining to do. You know, it messes me up, Sandy, but these are great. You know, like, I feel like the Mandela Effect first started rolling out, it was kind of like this huge, like, oh my God, like, what's going on? You know, like, They don't say, they don't say of the world at the end of We Are the Champions. Really? It's just like all this head scratching stuff that, of course, was sort of blew up with the whole Bernstein thing, which which seems kind of like humble, now that you think about it, like in the wake of everything else that's been going on. But suffice to say, folks, some of the Mandela Effect stuff does still trip me up. Like I said, the Lucy've got some explaining to do stuff, and also the bizarre foods with Andrew Zimmern instead of Zimmerman. Those are the two that I think have really stuck with me. All the other stuff I feel like could be explained, like the Bernstein thing. I feel like Bernstein just sounds better, and in our minds, that's what we wanted it to be. Berenstain. It's like, who wants to read a book about a bear stain?
So it's the whole thing is like two separate universes colliding with each other.
I don't know. As you said, Sandy, I just feel like people are just. It's gotten to the point where, like, particular YouTube channels that I used to actually respect, who actually used to like do some digging and research into Mandela Effect stuff, like, like, hey, here's like, Sandy, the Fruit of the Loom label. Do you remember that? The cornucopia not being in the Fruit of the Loom label?
Yes. Oh yeah, that's probably my favorite.
Right. Yeah, so this guy, he would go to lengths to like dig up like logos from like the 1800s that didn't have the cornucopia, like crazy stuff. But now recently he's just kind of jumped on this train like, oh, in sync, like it's like do they say bye 4 times or 5 times in the chorus? You know what I mean? It's just dumb shit like that where it's like, okay, you've clearly got a gimmick going on YouTube that you're just stretching. I'm not going to name names, but yeah, anyway, so that's how I feel about the Mandela Effect now. Sandy, I love how thrown off you were by the Fruit of the Loom thing when we did that podcast. I love that it still gets to you. All right, let's quickly talk about Deja Vu. Now, Sandy, in your own words, how would you describe Deja Vu?
I guess in my own terms, I'd say it's like for example, you're walking in a grocery store, and then like you walk past a certain area, or you see something that's not usually there, or you just get this feeling like this exact thing has happened before. I feel like I've seen that before. This is all happened. It's very familiar.
Like you've been in this exact same place and time. And
exactly.
Yeah.
It's almost like predicting the future. And
to me, it has a very distinct feeling. It's almost like a pins and needles type feeling when it happens to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not something that happens to me very often. Frankly, it's an incredibly fascinating phenomenon. And when it does happen to me, I find it incredibly comforting, to tell you the truth. Like, just incredibly, just like, like, oh, wow. Like, literally, like, I remember I was having a rough time mentally, around June of last year. And there was this one day where I was just getting, like, all these deja vu flashes to my high school years. And it just made me feel like, so comforted, because it was just like, oh, it's like I don't even know how to explain the comfort of it all, Sandy. It's just, to me, like I said, like the pins and needles sensation mixed with the familiarity of it and the flashback back to childhood, it's honestly a feeling that I really crave personally, like in the few times I have experienced it. I vividly remember the last time I went to Magic Mountain with my dad. We were in the hotel room watching Guardians of the Galaxy, and it was my dad's first time watching Guardians of the Galaxy, and I just got a really, really vivid sense of deja vu from what I'm assuming is staying in a hotel room that had probably the exact same layout, maybe from the same hotel chain, something like that. Something about the layout of the hotel room just struck me like, oh my God, the lamp and the like everything is like exactly how it was on whatever road trip I was remembering that me and my dad stayed at this hotel. You know what I mean? I just got this very, very vivid flash. So, Sandy, I'm going to tell you about the most powerful deja vu story of my life, and one that actually went on to form my spirituality. And my spirituality is this. You know, I don't subscribe myself to any sort of religion or anything like that. And honestly, when we get into kind of the whole, you know, the more of the ghosts and urban legends and stuff like that, I'm really not sure where I stand on the whole ghost thing. Like, I've had experiences that kind of lean either way, to tell you the truth. But one thing I do know is that this experience really, you know, really warped my sense of perspective and really kind of just gave me. I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. I need to close. This experience just really gave me kind of a humble sense of oh my God, like, you know, there is something at play in the universe that I can't explain that's bigger than myself. So essentially, here's the story. When I was a kid growing up, me and my family used to drive from basically from San Francisco to Santa Cruz, which was about an hour and a half drive, you know, along Highway 1, which is a very beautiful scenic drive around a bunch of coastlines and beaches and stuff like that. And I have one set of pictures from when I was like maybe like 1 or 2 years old of me and my dad and my mom in this really kind of like hidden, tucked away beach that was hard to get to. Like, there wasn't really a trail to it, but my dad and my mom found this beach like through, I don't even know, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like a public beach or anything. It's just kind of like they had to climb down to it or something. And there's pictures and everything. And I vividly remember this beach because it was way more rocky than any other beach that I had visited in my childhood, just based on the pictures of it. Like, there were just all these rocks, right? Like, all these like big rocks, like sticking out of the ocean and everything. Like, it was just a very rocky terrain, and even the sand itself had rock in it.
Okay.
So throughout my whole childhood, I kind of became fascinated by like trying to find this beach again, you know, this very rocky beach. And, you know, throughout the different road trips, you know, my dad and I, you know, we haven't been to Santa Cruz in years. We've been wanting to go back, but we used to make a point to stop by, you know, at least one beach on the way to Santa Cruz. And we could never find that damn beach with all the rocks in it. We could just never find it. And, so then senior year of high school, which was one of the last times I actually went to Santa Cruz, my dad and I are taking this road trip back, driving along Highway 1. We stop at a pullover, and there's actually a forest that's it's not really even a forest. It's just kind of like a thicket of trees, right, that you have to walk through to get to the cliffs. And I did that. And at the time, I was really into meditation. So I walked through these these trees, and I got to this overhang on the cliff, and it was like really far out, right? Mm-hmm. And I was meditating, and I have this meditation where basically what you do is you concentrate on sight, you concentrate on sound, and you concentrate on feeling, touch. And so, you know, you can imagine at the beach, all three of those things, you know, the waves crashing, the feeling of wind, you know, the sight of overlooking the water, you know, it all kind of comes together if you're really focused on those three individual things and kind of like separating them in your sensual experience. So essentially, I'm meditating, and then I look down, Sandy, and I see that goddamn beach with all those fucking rocks.
What the heck?
And the thing is, I don't even really get it, right? Like, when I look down and I see that beach with the rocks, I go back to the car, and me and my dad drive off, right? And then as I'm looking back, and I'm kind of like looking back at the beach with the rocks and everything, I get the most fucking powerful flash of deja vu I have ever had in my life. Like, holy shit, that was the beach with the rocks.
Wow.
Yeah, just it's not necessarily like I said. I can kind of explain it. It's sort of like the feeling of the time and the place, and that's the thing. It's like I don't really understand when people think of deja vu as something that's like unexplainable, like some sort of phenomenon. Like to me, it's a very containable phenomenon. It's a very much like
what it seems like to me is like some kind of loose time slip, like it's not a time slip, but it's kind of like a loose time slip. But like you feel like you're going back to some place which may still exist, but feels different, but feels the same at the same time. Like I was reading this Glacier Ghost Stories book, and there's a story in here about this couple who goes to this lodge that's in this park, and it's talking about all the different places they went. And mind you, I was in this place when I was reading this book, so I could go to these different places. And it says they went to the cafe. There's some kind of certain cafe with a name, and I was reading this book and I was reading all these details about the cafe and where they were walking and everything. And then we go out to dinner, and then I discover that we're eating at the exact same cafe.
Oh, damn.
People in the book. Yeah. And they got the huckleberry pie, and then I got the huckleberry pie. So it's not exactly the same thing, but it's kind of like these weird coincidences where it's like, wow, it's kind of weird,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that
kind of got the feeling like being in Knott's Berry Farm, you sort of get that feeling of history for me, almost even more so than at Disneyland, to tell you the truth. I mean, mostly honestly, because I think Disneyland, like I've told you this to you before, Sandy, off air, but like Disneyland has just become ruined by oversaturated crowds. Like, I mean, I'm going back there for a day this October. I'm looking forward to it. Sure. Like I'm especially looking forward to seeing the Rivers of America and the new Guardians of the Galaxy Tower of Terror and the Disneyland Railroad, which are all things that they've put in since, I mean, obviously they didn't just lay down the tracks for the Disneyland Railroad in the past year since I've been there, but they reopened the railroad since then. So, yeah, looking forward to that. Not looking forward to the crowd control situation. Knott's, on the other hand, is a theme park with almost twice as much history as Disneyland. And it still has that like hometown park quality to it. And I'm only bringing up Knott's, Sandy, because I know you're very familiar with it as well, where, like so many changes, and you get this at that's why I can kind of compare the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk to Knott's Berry Farm. Like I legitimately think the Santa Cruz Boardwalk, even though Knott's Berry Farm and the boardwalk, like a boardwalk is a very different thing from from like an actual theme park. You know what I mean? Even though they're both essentially collections of rides, I just feel like both the boardwalk and Knott's Berry Farm have kind of a quirky selection of rides and also a very colorful history behind them. Like, did you know the boardwalks where they invented saltwater taffy?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
Fun fact. Anyways, I'm kind of going off track here, but you see what I mean about Knott's Berry Farm. It's like, you walk through it and you just like, you can just feel the history in that place, especially in Ghost Town, obviously.
That's what I was going to bring up, is with like Disneyland, they've of course said, Disneyland is never going to stop changing. We're always going to be adding new things. With Knott's Berry Farms, they don't have the kind of budget Disney does, so they can't always update things all the time. Things stick around for years and decades. Animatronics like the graveyard, which like almost doesn't even work anymore. So it's kind of like
I can attest to you that none of the effects in the graveyard work. At least the last time I was there.
if that was at Disney, they'd have like projections and stuff.
Right.
Not only would it work, they'd have all different kinds of stuff. So it's like you can almost feel like just a sense of history with Knott's more over Disneyland, which, Disney, they keep a lot of their stuff around. Of course, Pirates and Haunted Mansion are great examples, but they change enough where you don't get that same feeling you get at Knott's with the history and just the dated effects and broken effects.
To be fair, have you been to Knott's since they updated the log ride and the Calico Mine ride?
The last time I was at Knott's was like in 2007, so I don't think
Okay,
so.
so yeah, the new log ride and Calico Mine ride are both spectacular. But
Really?
oh yeah, oh they're. I mean, I honestly think they're like on caliber with Disney attractions. To tell you the truth, like really, honest to God.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's great.
Because back in the day, Sandy, back when you went, I'm sure those animatronics were like jankety as all hell.
I remember them being very, very, I guess, very static and very creepy. Like,
right.
You know,
And don't get me wrong, I mean, the animatronics in there now aren't like Pirates level animatronics, of course, but it's just the pacing of those two rides and the sense of atmosphere that's really built up. Anyways, yeah. I kind of feel like we're kind of turning this into a Knott's Berry Farm podcast. Any other thoughts on Deja Vu?
No, that's all I have.
All right, so let's get into the glitch in the matrix of it all. Oh boy. Now, Sandy, I have laid out some very cryptic clues to you over the 5 stories that we'll be talking about here. The first one is the stairs glitch. Now, Sandy, this is something of a phenomenon that a lot of people have a memory of, or at least very similar memories. And when I read this, like when I read someone else's account of this, it just made me flash back to an event in my childhood that I never really thought twice about. But now I'm just like, what the fuck? So essentially the glitch is if you're a little kid living in a 2-story house and you fall down the stairs, you'll be fucking fine. Like, you won't have a scratch on you somehow. Like, there will be some sort of force protecting you. And like I said, it's probably just dumb luck, in all honesty. But so many people have memories of falling downstairs when they're little kids, hitting their head on the wall, and just it not being a big deal. Now, Sandy, I don't know. Like, you would think that maybe it's just the culture we live in nowadays has changed, and like parenting has become a lot more protective since we were kids. But you would, because I have a vivid memory of my parents telling me. Actually, it's very much connected to a reoccurring nightmare I had. So I'll tell you about the nightmare, Sandy. But what do you think of this? Just overall, the phenomenon of like a lot of people having the memory of falling downstairs as kids and just being completely fine. Like, there's no need for a doctor's visit. The parents weren't concerned. There were no broken bones. It's just like fucking no big deal at all.
I think it probably is just luck.
Dumb luck. Yeah. You're boring. Come on.
I think people exaggerate too. Like, I wasn't hurt. I only had like a few bruises, but they leave that part out because, and people, do tend to exaggerate stories.
Sandy, the thing about, let me tell you, the thing about the recurring thing in these stories that creeps me out, that kind of connects to me, is the fact that the parents don't really react to it.
Like, yeah, I know, but this is like, this is, God knows how long ago. How do we know if the parents reacted or not? We only have the person's word to take,
Right. Well, I personally did fall down the stairs when I was younger, and it did lead to something that my mom this was just a fucking brilliant parenting move on my mom's part. All right. She said, oh, Tyler, don't go upstairs without a parent's permission, because if you do, then at night the boogeyman is going to come and I quote, eat you. So it's not just come and get you. Like, she literally threatened that this cannibalistic man was going to come and literally eat me if I went upstairs without my parents' permission.
Oh my gosh.
And Sandy, let me just tell you, that led to reoccurring nightmares. Just I could literally do a whole podcast on my reoccurring boogeyman nightmares as a kid.
I remember getting nightmares, and still to this day being creeped out by these Adventures in Odyssey tapes, where like they, this is off topic, but they find this dead body in the cellar, and it's like has gunshots in it, and it's, I don't know, it freaked me out because I would listen to those tapes like while I was going to bed, so in the dark, and hearing all that. I don't know, it's kind of a similar story, but anyways, I digress.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, and Sandy, I can still to this day, like, so I could just close my mind and he's just fucking there staring at me. This boogeyman, all right? Like, and you know what he looks like, Sandy? He's basically like an undead version of Sherlock Holmes. Like, he's got like kind of like, that's the weird thing about my vision of the boogeyman, is he's got like this trench coat and like this hat, but he's also got this like really gnarly face, like almost kind of like original Hamburglar almost. You know what I mean? Like the gnarly, like, I don't know. Anyways,
yeah, I'm looking at the Hamburglar, the original one.
So yeah, like I said, I could definitely do a full podcast about just my reoccurring nightmares and lucid dreams and all that. Dreams should definitely be something we do in the future, Sandy.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so any final thoughts on the stairs glitch, which you just so gloriously just, you know, put logic to and just crushed all my dreams?
You got to have someone here to put these things in reality, right?
Okay, well, I think the next one's going to be harder for you to explain, Sandy, all right?
Okay.
And this one sounds like it's the most bizarre. It's just simply the dead person coming back to life. How the hell could that happen, Sandy? How the hell could someone you know die and then come back to life? I'll tell you how. If it's someone that you don't know really well, if it's someone from your school. So let me paint you a picture, Sandy. And like I said, these are all based on stories that I heard on the Hell Freezer channel that are in Glitch in the Matrix. I'm doing the very best I can to, you know, not exaggerate any details or anything, just tell them how I heard them. Okay. So let me paint you a picture. Essentially, there's these two brothers at school that are kind of like gearheads, right? They're like really into motor cars and stuff, you know, like they're the shop teacher's favorite students, you know what I mean? And the kid in the story, he's not a big fan of these kids. You know, he thinks they're kind of douchebags. Their parents are rich and they drive around in like these fancy sports cars to school and everything. They're like, you know, they're like high school juniors or seniors or something. I want to say high school juniors. So one day it comes over the intercom on the principal's office, you know, after a weekend that these two brothers died in a car accident, right? Okay. And it was something where, you know, like the guidance counselor was available in the school for counseling for anyone who needed it. Like the school was taking it very seriously. Like they had a moment of silence. They had a eulogy for him, for the brothers. I mean, you know, like everyone was kind of bummed out about it, right?
Yeah.
So then enter a few months later, and suddenly these two brothers are fucking back in class. And they're bruised up. One of them has a broken arm. You know, so obviously they were in some sort of car accident. But, duh, they're not dead. And now the person telling the story, he's just really, really, you know, like, because like I said, the one thing that he vividly remembers is the, you know, like they made an announcement over the intercom saying these kids were dead. And this wasn't like a thing where it was like a life and death, you know, like they were like in the hospital, you know, being operated on or something like that, you know. This was something where it's like, it's literally like months after the fact, life has pretty much gone back to normal. And then suddenly these two brothers show up who this guy telling the story has vivid memories of, you know, like the school making a big deal about the death of them. Like I said, these two brothers were favorite students of, you know, of at least a good couple members of the faculty. So, you know, it was a pretty dramatic death, you know, and school took it very seriously. So the thing that really trips the guy telling the story out is the fact that there was no correction on it. Like, the principal didn't come over the intercom and, like, I'm so sorry that we accidentally said these kids were dead when they were just in a serious accident. You know what I mean? So how do you explain that one, Sandy? Because that's one that, when I heard it, that just kind of like, whoa. Because like I said, the thing that makes this believable to me is the fact that this guy wasn't close to these people. But the fact that he does remember, he remembers it sticking out in his mind, the fact that there was a big memorial service for these brothers, that these brothers were kind of like a big beacon of the student body and everything like that.
Okay. With everything you say here, it proves my theory here even more.
Oh, God.
Literally everything you said, it proves made me think. All right, so here we go.
Are you just going to say that the guy lied about the school making the announcement that they were dead?
No.
Okay.
Honestly, I think that these boys, I think one of their parents got in the crash. Well, if they're in the car, then I think one of their parents died. And this kid who's hearing this stuff, he doesn't know these kids well. And, the kids are coming back, a month or two afterwards. That's pretty regular for, if your mom or your dad dies, it's pretty regular. Of course, they're still going to have their injuries because they're still healing from the accident. And the reason they didn't make a correction is because this kid who's sharing this stuff, he heard it wrong, that the principal was having a moment of silence for these two boys, his mom or dad, or who knows, maybe even both. And so that's why there was no correction, and that's why these two boys came back.
Huh. Okay.
It makes sense, doesn't it?
It does make sense to a certain degree. I mean,
if you're in elementary school, I don't know about you, but
no. These are high schoolers. These are high schoolers.
Oh, high school. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. To me, here's the thing. Like, I've actually known people who have like lost their parents in the middle of the school year, and no, there's not been any big announcement about it. It's just kind of a burden they have to carry with them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. The thing that I guess the fact that these kids, according to this guy, they were popular with the school faculty. Like, maybe it could be that the parents were like really big members of the PTA.
Exactly.
Maybe. All right. Yeah, I could see that. I just think it's more fun to think about, like,
exactly.
like the alternate reality of it all.
Yeah, exactly. I think, of course, you could be hearing something wrong over the intercom because it's fuzzy.
But like I said, it wasn't just the intercom though, Sandy. It was like the attitude of like the whole faculty. Like, there was just like an air hung over the school for at least a good week or two after this happened. Do you really think that would be the case for parents of a student?
If these kids are popular and their parents are big members of the I guess maybe school board or some kind of administration really close with the school, I think that could definitely have a pretty big impact for the first week or so.
Okay, well, Sandy, this is why I love having you on these podcasts, because you're just you're setting me straight, bud. Okay.
Honestly,
story number.
I love to believe that the whole thing is true. Maybe, who knows? Maybe it is true. I don't know, but I think it's always fun believing.
Like, maybe the brothers were put into like cryogenic freezing or something like that, and it's like, hey, this is the proof that cryogenic freezing works.
Oh yeah, like with people believing Walt Disney was frozen. It's fun believing stuff like that, but we all know
one of these days he's coming back, Sandy. One of these days. God. Okay, let's move on to the third story, which is Ghost Town. Ooh. All right, Sandy, this is a really simple one to tell, okay? It's basically like a paragraph's worth of explanation. And then we'll talk about it and see how we feel about it. So essentially, the root of this story is that a mother and a daughter are on a road trip together. They're driving along. Sandy, you watch Justin Scarred, so you're familiar with Route 6.
Yeah, Route 66.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you know that there's a lot of like little, kind of small towns along the along that area.
Yeah.
Sandy, God damn it. I know you, and I already know what your response is going to be to this one. You son of a bitch. So basically, along this, this mother and daughter are driving along. They come upon what is essentially a ghost town, but it's not a traditional ghost town. That's the thing. It's not like a ghost town out of the 1800s or something. It's literally like an abandoned town that has like all the modern things a town would have, like a McDonald's, a Starbucks, a movie theater, all of that. But the town is just like completely boarded up, completely abandoned, like all the windows and stuff of all the businesses are boarded up. The main street's boarded up. There's no one in sight. It's just like no one around for miles in this town.
Okay.
On the way back through Route 66, they pass through the same town again, and keep in mind, this is maybe like 2 weeks later. So they've been, on this road trip, and now they're like coming back the same direction. Sandy, can you guess what happens when they get to this town again?
Everything's all opened up.
Yep, you guessed it. Sandy, can I guess what your explanation is going to be to this?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
That there's a lot of small towns around Route 66. There's a lot of ghost towns, and maybe they just got the two towns confused.
I actually didn't think of that.
Well, what was your explanation going to be to it?
It seems like if you're going, if you're going to a specific destination, like say I'm going to, I'm going to the museum downtown. There's usually one specific route that I'm going to take that I'm almost always going to take, and I'm taking that route back and forth. So it's most likely that they were passing through the same town, because they wouldn't, unless they're going somewhere else, or trying to take a shortcut.
So how would they pass through the same town and like literally like all the businesses are open up, like it's like a completely like thriving normal town, like there's all kinds of people walking on the streets? Like if you do think it's the same town, then how would it be boarded up just 2 weeks before then with no explanation? You're thinking on this. I gotcha. I fucking got you.
How big is the town?
From my understanding, it's like a typical kind of, like small town. Like there's like a main street that stretches for like 2 city blocks. There's like some suburbs around, on the outskirts. It's, I don't know, maybe if I were to give a comparison, I don't know, like something like oh gosh, like I don't know. I don't have anything to compare it to, but
that's weird.
Just picture like a small town on Route 66 with like a main street and everything, that sort of deal. But like I said, this isn't like a town that feels like it's out of like history, right? Which is what most ghost towns out of Route 66 feel like. Like this is a town with all the modern amenities. It has a modern Starbucks. It has a McDonald's that's not like a fucking like 1950s Ray Kroc McDonald's, it's got a Starbucks. I keep harping on the Starbucks of it all, because that's like because that's like the most modern thing I can possibly think of, right?
Oh, here we go. There's something here.
Okay.
Okay. So
I know this was the best one yet, though, because you're actually having to think about it.
Okay. So did this? It was a girl, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So did she release the date, like the day of when they were passing through this town the first time?
I don't think so. No.
No. Well, maybe it was over a weekend, and maybe out in Route 66, that's a pretty desolate area. There's not a lot of, correct me if I'm wrong, there's not a lot of living spaces out there, right?
Honestly, you'd know more about Route 66 than I would, because you've probably watched more of Justin's videos about it.
Well, I don't think there is. I mean, it seems just like, desert.
Okay, so that
dry desert.
to me, the fact that it's desolate, that makes even less sense than that a town could just get completely boarded up and then reopened in the course of like 2 weeks.
Well, what do you mean by what does she mean by boarded?
Like literally, all the buildings are boarded up. Like the windows are boarded up, the doors are boarded up. Like literally, all of the downtown businesses are just boarded up. I've stumped you on this one.
I was gonna say maybe the shop owners, they don't like to come out to their shops every day, so they gate it up because they don't want to go out every day.
They just happen to pass by on this town's annual purge, and everyone's just boarded themselves up inside.
But it's like it wouldn't be the case, because I know.
This is the weirdest one yet, all right? This is out of the ordinary.
It is, because you wouldn't have all the shops boarded up on the same day,
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's all of them. Like, there was no one on the streets. They even drove through some of the suburbs, and even some of the suburban houses looked abandoned or boarded up.
I don't know. You got me.
All right. Well, I don't really have any explanation for that one either. It just creeps me the hell out, because I'm very familiar with road trips and whatnot. Sandy, I do vividly remember one of the times me and my dad drove to Magic Mountain. We had to make a turn off to go get some gas at a gas station. And we just got into like the most horrific, like, ghetto. Like, we're talking like piles and piles of trash, like people's backyards being just like one big trash pile. We're talking about like barbed wire on everyone's fences. I vividly remember we were stopping at a gas station, and there was this car that would roll up. Like, I don't even know why we were there for this long. Like, we were there for about 10 minutes. I don't even know why we were there for that long. But okay. I swear to God, Sandy, in the 10 minutes we were there, this car would roll up, like this lowrider, and it would come just blasting music, right? Just blasting this this rap music, okay. And then just leave again. Like, it'd stop in front of the store for a minute, and then it'd leave. And that happened like 3 times in the course of like 10 minutes. And to this day, I still have like no idea where that bizarre ass fucking town was with like the creepy gas station. Ugh. All right.
I've seen this before. I have an answer for this. I've seen this before. I honestly think that person in the car was waiting for someone, and they were just driving around, waiting for that person to come out. Because I personally have seen that happen at the place where I work, where okay. customers will just they'll drive around in circles in the parking lot by the entrance, and they're just waiting for someone.
I guess that makes sense.
Maybe the person in the car was waiting for maybe let's say it's a guy waiting for his girlfriend to get out of work.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like punching out, and he's just making his rounds. That's the only thing I can come up with, other than
it just freaked me the fuck out, because it felt like some sort of like gang initiation shit or something.
Where was this again?
I don't know. It was like I want to say it was like somewhere like it was like in the East Bay, which is not a good area. So like somewhere over by like Vacaville or Oakland or something.
Okay.
I don't know exactly where it was. And like I said, my dad and we just had to make that quick turn off to go to the gas station. Anyways, okay, so next subject. Sandy, did we talk about the time thing when we talked about the Mandela effect? I have a feeling we did.
The time slip?
The fact that time feels like it's moving faster, and not just in an, oh, hey, I'm getting older And so therefore I feel like I have less time, which is just a universal thing that everyone goes through. But the fact that like Sandy, I can't tell you how many times when I was going to the museum regularly would be getting ready for work and I'd have like 20 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'd feel like I'd do like two quick things, like go to the bathroom, brush my teeth, right? And that would take maybe like 5 minutes. And then I'd turn around, it'd be like 15 minutes, 15 minutes had passed, and I'd have to like scramble to get all my stuff together. Just little instances like that where it just feels like, and like I said, I'm sure what it is just the whole like, we're getting older and our perception of time is getting faster. It feels like we have less time in the day. And there certainly are days where I'm really bored and it feels like time's moving really slow too. But I don't know, I just really quick with the time phenomenon. I do think it is kind of, I don't know, like I said, I think it is kind of like halfway between a Mandela effect and a glitch, because obviously time is something like we're all wired to, right? And I don't know, Sandy, time has been kind of a fascinating thing to me because, like, what do you think of the whole idea of time? Like the fact that it's a man-made invention and we all run our lives by it, and yet, like, in reality, there's no real concept of time.
That's weird to think about.
Like the fact that man invented hours and seconds and minutes, and if he didn't, then it'd just be like we'd have no frame of reference for it. So it's just an entirely like foreign concept to the way the world was made. I know I'm getting into like some super deep like metaphysical shit here, but like think of time zones, right? And think of think of daylight savings time, Sandy. Like we as a society, we turn our clocks back an hour deliberately and then go on that as if that's the time. You know what I mean? Just to give ourselves more, more or less daylight. It's like, what is up with that? That's always been something that's tripped me out. The fact that like people can just like set their watches to a different time, and if everyone does it, and if all the watches are programmed to do it, then that time becomes fact, even though it's not like time just shifted. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Like if all the clocks in the world just suddenly changed from 1 o'clock to 7 o'clock.
Right.
And
right.
Then that's automatically how everything works now.
Exactly. I mean, it's like obviously we haven't experienced something that radical, but
yeah.
Well, I don't know, Sandy. You actually kind of experienced with me. Remember the last time we were doing a hangout and I was like basically blackout drunk. It wasn't on air. I was just like, I'm drunk. You want to do a hangout? And
it was the what were you gonna say? I think I know what you're gonna say.
No, just the fact that obviously just the work of alcohol and everything. Like obviously that's the explanation for it. But the last thing I remember from that night, Sandy, is talking to you on the hangout, right? And then next thing I know, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. I've been in the bathtub for fucking 4 hours. Like, there is a legitimate, like, skip in my memory from me sitting on the computer talking to you, like, my grandparents are up, like, everyone's still awake, to me waking up in the bathtub, which has been running for 4 hours. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. Like I said, alcohol is the obvious culprit for that. But even still, like that's not the first time I've gotten drunk, Sandy. That's not the first time I've gotten drunk with you on a podcast. You know what I mean? And I don't like to call I try not to drink alcohol like frequently or anything, but I do like to get loose every once in a while. So I don't know, just the blackout of it all. It's really interesting to me. Like, it scared me at the time, but now it's just like, like I said, obviously, I'm not trying to like pin this on anything supernatural. Obviously, the all is what made me black out. It's just the feeling of like, holy shit, like I was sitting here and now it's just suddenly hours later and I don't fucking remember anything.
I mean, the last thing I remember, I just we were talking, and then you were starting to get sick, and I said I was going to go, and you just gave me a thumbs up, and then I left, and you were just kind of crouched.
You know what? I actually kind of remember the thumbs up now that you mentioned it.
you just weren't feeling well. You went, just got in the bathtub and crashed.
Probably, yeah. Oh, God. Okay, so it's time to get to my personal story of the day. All right, Sandy, I've kind of given you a crash course on the glitch in the Matrix. Do you feel like you have a better understanding of what the glitch in the Matrix phenomenon is?
I do now, yes.
Okay, well, I'm going to tell you a personal story relating. This is like I've had some deja vu stories, you know what I mean? I've had some ghost stories. This is easily my glitch in the Matrix story. Okay. And I might have told it to you before, but if I have and you remember it, just pretend that you're hearing it for the first time.
Okay.
Okay, so this is going to tie into our next podcast, which is going to be hometown urban legends and ghost stories. So there's this hill that's like directly adjacent to my high school. And keep in mind, my high school's been open since like the early 1900s. So like generations upon generations of Petalumites have gone there. And generations upon generations of Petalumites have therefore used this hill kind of like a party spot. Like, this was the same party spot that me and my dad, my mom and my dad kind of like would hang out at back in the day. That was the same party spot that my grandpa and my grandma would hang out back in the day. You get the picture. Mm-hmm. So essentially how this hill is divided is that there's a main street that you have to walk up in order to get to the hill. And it's like a steep slope, right? Just to get to the hill. Yeah. And so the hill is basically like kind of like just the slither of wilderness in between all these suburban houses. So you've got a path up the middle of this hill, like a steep path up the middle, like going up to the top. Okay. On the left side, you have basically the backside of houses, right? Mm-hmm. You have the backside of, like you're walking along the backside of fences and stuff like that, along the backside of people's backyards. But there isn't really a way to get to the street level from if you're going left, because it's just all people's backyards and eventually you'll get fenced in if you walk that way. Okay. And then from this path, if you make a right, then you'll go through a whole thick patch of forest. And this patch of forest, like, you can traverse through it and everything. And it'll lead out to, this patch of forest will lead out to street level. And so basically there's two sides in which you can enter the hill. The street level where it's basically the one side of the street level don't have to walk up to get to it, right? You can get to it without having to walk up a hill. And then the other side, the side that I was on, you have to walk up another hill, like a street to get to it. You get the picture? Yeah. Okay, so two entrances. Two accesses to street level. On the left, you have the, you have the backside of the suburbs and everything. On the right, you have this thick patch of forest. All right, so it's around sunset. My friend and I decide we're going to walk up the hill. We're going to get some exercise. We're going to, take in the sunset and then come down. As we're walking the hill, we hear from the forest a dog. And this isn't very uncommon because, like I said, there's a lot of like backyards in the area, and so dogs kind of get loose there all the time. And this dog just sounds kind of very mad, right? Like he's like barking very, like not like he has rabies or anything. Just he's just loudly barking from the forest. And so my friend and I were like, okay, we need to make a point to avoid this dog as we're walking down. So, we get up to the hill, we get up to the top, we take in the sunset, very nice view and everything. And we're walking down. And at about the same point where we heard the dog the first time, we hear the dog again, except this time he's about twice as close as he was before. Like, we're talking, he's probably like 3 or 4 trees away from us in this forest. So what my friend and I do is we start walking on the left, right? Remember, I'm telling you, like, the left is the suburbs, the right is the forest. So we start walking on the left, and we just keep walking and walking because we're just kind of scared. We just want to avoid the dog, right? Yeah. Like, we know we're not going to be able to get out onto street level by walking on the left. We know it's just completely surrounded by suburban houses. But we're just doing it just to get away from the dog. And eventually I'm kind of like, hey, we should probably like head back in the opposite direction so we can start to go to street level, right?
Yeah.
And as I'm saying this, Sandy, we come upon the side of the street level access to the hill that you would have had to walk through the whole forest to get to. So Think about the geography of that. Like I said, we're walking off the whole time. We're not changing direction the whole time. We're just walking to the left. You have to walk through this forest to get to this other access point to the hill. And obviously, my friend and I, we are not wanting to walk through this forest at all because this dog's in the forest. And yet, somehow, by walking on the left, we somehow end up way on the far right of the hill. Explain, please.
I'm still trying to comprehend and trying to make a mental map of how this is all working out. So are you going? There's a big section of forest. You're going around it.
No, we're going. There's the big section of forest, and we're walking just in a line, right? Like, we're just walking straight to the left to avoid the dog. And like I said, straight to the left, there should only be the backsides of suburbs.
Okay. I'm not sure how to explain.
Good.
I'm sorry. Oh.
Because, no, honestly, like, if you would have come up with a logical explanation, I would have been like, you son of a bitch. I've been holding on to this.
I'm sorry. I thought you were gonna say like a dog like showed up and like, or you heard him from like a completely different area.
No, like I said, the reason why the dog's part of the story is just because the dog is the reason why we ended up walking in the opposite direction.
Oh, okay. Huh, I don't know.
To this day, I've never heard anything quite like that in terms of glitches in the Matrix, but to me, it very much is a glitch in the Matrix, because it very much is just like something that I went through that, like I can't explain. It's like the geography of the hill just completely changed. Like, it's the thing that really gets me is it's like, it's not like we could have just turned back and walked in the opposite direction and ended up there, right? Like, even if we had turned back, we still would have had to walk through the forest to get to this other access point, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing that really trips me out. The fact that we ended up on the far right side of the hill. I feel like I'm repeating myself here by going right. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to explain that.
It felt like kind of like a. It felt like the geography of the hill had like shifted on us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like somehow the hill wanted us to make it out. And I feel like a fucking crazy person saying that the hill is like, personified and wants us to make it out, like wants us to avoid the dog and everything, as if the hill has a consciousness.
Well, think about it this way, Tiki. What if that hill was an alternate time slip and you are now in an alternate reality? And I am
an alternate reality where the access point to the hill is on the far left instead of the far right.
Yeah, and I'm from a different universe. And I don't actually exist. And I don't actually Dragon Jacob and I don't actually exist.
Oh god.
At least
I just watch the YouTube videos back, and it's just me talking to myself. Oh god. Just hours upon hours upon hours of me talking to myself.
It's all really strange to think about. It hurts. It hurts my brain to think about it too much, because you think about what, how these things happen, how they, how it makes sense. You're trying to make sense of things that shouldn't make sense and don't make sense, and it was just all a lot to think about. Especially all these people who claim all these time slips and different things, Mandela effects and stuff like that. It's a handful to think about.
All right, well, Sandy, it was my pleasure to give you this this mental exercise this afternoon. Thank you for joining me for it.
Well, thank you for the honor.
Of course, like I said, we're going to make this into a bi-weekly thing. Every other week, we will be doing a Disney debate, and then every other week after the Disney debates, we will be doing a Scary Adventures. So, say you're reading from that book. You want to hold that book up again? Do you have it handy?
Yes. Ta-da.
All right. You want to set that up, Sandy?
All right. So, folks, over the past month, I went to a national park in Montana, and it's Glacier National Park. And while I was in a gift shop there, they had this really neat book, and it caught my attention because it's ghost stories based around the area that I was staying in. So obviously, I got it. I still have to get about a quarter through it. I read quite a bit, actually, which is weird because I'm not a huge reader. Anyways, there's a lot of really interesting stuff in here. I was talking to you about that cafe those two people went to. I just happened to be, the same one.
Mm-hmm.
And the motel they were staying in, after realizing all this stuff, I went and I checked out the same motel they were staying in, and I asked the person, the guy who was working there. We pulled up, and I got out of the car, and he's walking out of the building towards the car, and I get out and I asked him, is the stuff that happened, is it true? Like, is like some room 66 or something, like some old man died in a bath, which it sounds weird how all that's set up, but he could neither confirm nor deny. So he seemed really, it was really weird because it was raining out and he was acting really strange when I started asking him all this stuff. So, but that's one of many. There's like 10 different stories here, all really interesting. There's a lot to talk about. Cool. So join us next time, and
so specifically next time we'll be talking about the theme will be local urban legends and myths, and this will be basically urban legends and myths connected to. Now, Sandy, this isn't exactly local for you, but you did spend a good chunk of time here.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm going to be talking about Petaluma, California, which, like, you might have heard of that town before if you're into ghost stuff, all right? Because we have Haystack Landing, which is one of the most haunted spots in America. That was an old shipping dock back in the day, in like the 1800s, where countless accidents happened. Petaluma, California is the hometown of Polly Kloss, who was one of the more famous kidnapping cases of the 1990s. As a matter of fact, my grandma lived like literally less than a block from her house.
Wow.
And she still lives less than a block from her house. And whenever I'm doing a podcast at my alternate location that isn't this background, that is less than a block from her house. Really freaks me out. I don't know. Just very like there's a Polly Kloss Performing Arts Center, that was made in her honor. And it's like all, like, speaking of boarded up and abandoned, Sandy, that thing is like, it's in a sad state of disrepair. And that just, it's like, so just think about it that way, right? Like, we have this town with this really dark history with, like Polly Kloss being sort of like, she was kind of like on the same level as like a John Bonet Ramsey or a Madeline McCann or something like that. There wasn't really a mystery to her like there was to Madeline McCann or John Bonet Ramsey, but there was, it was still a very famous kidnapping case that, resulted in a ton of media attention for the town.
Mhm.
And also there's the Phoenix Theater, which is probably what the town's most famous for. And this is actually a theater that Houdini himself performed in back in the day.
Wow.
And this theater has burned down 2 different times, Sandy. 2 different times. It has burned down and they've reconstructed it.
Wow.
Yeah, a
Wow.
lot of history there. A lot of history. So
That's
we'll be
interesting.
getting into all that. We'll be getting into all that and more on the next Scary Adventures. Do you believe in ghosts?